I have a confession to make. I walked out of this picture. Literally was about, I guess like an hour and 15 minutes into the film, and I just stood up and I walked out. I paid, what was it, $12 to go see it in a matinee. My mom came with me. I bought her a ticket as well. And I just said, you want to just walk out? And we did. I can't even tell you the last time I walked out of a picture. I'm struggling to remember. But I just felt like, you know what? I know I just blew money watching a terrible movie, but I feel like my time is more valuable than just sitting here. And the sad thing is, I knew I wasn't going to like it. I knew I wasn't going to like it. The reason I went to see it is because I was like, well, it's very popular right now. I've obviously am the host of the History of Rock show. So I'm sure people, at least some people maybe who follow me, will be interested in what I have to say about the film. And as soon as I found out it was a Baz Luhrmann film, I went, oh God, no, because I am just not a Baz Luhrmann fan. I remember absolutely hating his version of Romeo and Juliet. I think that's the first thing I ever saw of him. It made me really hate Leonardo DiCaprio before he finally came around. I couldn't get through Moulin Rouge. Never saw his version of The Great Gatsby. I couldn't even tell you any of his other films. That I just don't like his style of directing. I don't like all this fast editing and all this, like, this is going over here, now we're over here. It's like a long trailer. It's like Michael Bay, only without the explosions. That's Baz Luhrmann to me. I'm sure there's lots of people who like his movies, and there's probably other people who really like this movie as well. Oh my God, I hated it so much. I will say there were a couple moments where I was laughing. It was like The Room quality. I'm like, all that needs to happen is for Elvis to say, "Oh, hi, Priscilla." Like, there were some so bad it's good moments, but it was like every stupid, awful thing about rock and roll biopics amplified up to 10. It was so, like, it kind of reminded me of the James Brown movie, where it was like, started with him later in life, and then it went over here, and then went over here. Which I'm not against that idea. Like, Ray did that a little bit, and that was good. But it's just like this film is just like, it's on cocaine. It's like a trailer. That's all it is. It's a 2.5 long trailer. And when I say 2.5 hours, I mean 2.5 hours. This is a 2.5 hour movie. And I got to an hour and 15, whatever I got to, and I just said, I can't stand this anymore. I'm done. I'm walking out of this film. Yeah, it was really bad. And look, I know I'm the History of Rock guy. I'm not expecting a rock and roll history lesson from this film. I know they're gonna have to change things. I know they're gonna have to skip over things. But what I was saying was, like, I was talking to my mom. And by the way, my mom, for those of you who don't know, she sang backups with Otis Blackwell. Otis Blackwell wrote "Don't Be Cruel," "Return to Sender," All Shook Up. He also wrote Fever. He wrote Great Balls of Fire, for God's sakes. I talked about him in great detail in the History of Rock 50s video. I knew he wasn't going to be in this film, obviously, and as soon as I said, yeah, I don't think he's going to be in this film, my mom was like, well, how can you not have that? And it was interesting because her feelings were that it was an awful way to introduce anybody to Elvis or his music, which they really don't play a lot of. I mean, they do have his music in there, but it's like, there's one moment where he's meeting Priscilla. And, it's not a bad scene, and you're thinking, okay, well, here's a moment for him to play, like, Love Me Tender or something like that. Maybe they can have a nice, like, romantic moment where he plays her a song, So, it might be kind of cheesy, but, that'll kind of work nicely. And you start hearing Can't Help Falling in Love, but it's not Elvis's version. Like, and also he plays a record, and it's a pop version. It's like, I can't remember who it was who did it, and I'm sure whoever did it is a fine artist or whatever. But it's one of those like, God, like, 2020 style remakes of like a classic song, like a Billie Eilish version of it or something like that. Fine, but we're in like 1950s. Like, why is this playing? And then there's other moments where he's like going through the black section of town, and they're playing hip hop music, and I'm like, why? Was hip hop around in the 1950s? Why is this in this film? Of all the things you could have played, to me, it's like if in Stranger Things. So just talk about. Imagine you're watching Stranger Things, and all of a sudden, a Lady Gaga song plays. Okay, fine, but why would you include that in a show that takes place in the 1980s? It makes no sense to me. And a lot of films do that. Baz Luhrmann has done that a lot. It's so stupid. Then again, this is a guy who took Romeo and Juliet and gave them guns instead of swords, but they're still saying, put up their sword, and it's sword 9mm. Oh my God, this is so fucking stupid. Okay, I don't even know where to begin with this. I have to tell you something. I have to go do a gig very soon. So I just wanted to get this out while I'm fresh. Okay, so the film is obviously about Elvis Presley. I don't think I need to tell you who Elvis is. If you don't know who Elvis is, you probably need to get out of the rock or go watch my History of Rock documentary. The thing is, I get comments about Elvis all the time because I brought up in the History of Rock 50s video that there's a lot of controversy surrounding Elvis. Elvis was the biggest thing ever. Like, before the Beatles, Elvis was basically, they called him the King of Rock and Roll. King of Rock and Roll, kind of a stupid title, but his influence should not be forgotten. He influenced everybody. He influenced the Beatles. He influenced Led Zeppelin. He influenced a lot of the guys that he was hanging around with at the time. Even in Hail Hail Rock and Roll, Chuck Berry and Little Richard said, he broke down a lot of doors for us. But I do understand that there are a lot of people who feel like he ripped off a lot of black music. We can have a whole discussion about that. And to the film's credit, they do go into that a little bit. And my feeling has always been, I love some of Elvis's best stuff. Jailhouse Rock, I still consider that to be like the epitome of 50s rock and roll in many ways, up there with, Johnny Be Good by Chuck Berry and Long Tall Sally by Little Richard. There's so many artists. But I think the problem is when people say before Elvis there was nothing. I don't believe in that. Supposedly that's attributed to John Lennon. John Lennon said that. But I think if we don't give credit to Big Mama Thornton and Arthur Crudup, who are actually in this film, I think that's kind of a problem. So obviously you've got these two camps. You got the people I get a lot of comments from. It's like, how dare you make fun of Elvis? Elvis was the greatest, blah, 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 blah. And those who say Elvis stole black music, he's an evil white person or whatever. And, I'm kind of in the middle of that, but I will tell you this film will satisfy neither of those arguments. There's a moment where he's hanging out with B.B. King. And credit to the actor who plays B.B. King. He's definitely got some of his mannerisms down. We never get to see him sing, at least not from what I saw. Maybe he sings later in the film. And like Elvis is saying, it's really hard out there. People don't like me. I just want to be myself. Typical, rock and roll movie biopic BS. And I almost want B.B. King to say, oh, really? Oh, you think you're having a hard time? It's like, why don't you try being black in 1950s America and try putting out a record and see how well you do? And there are moments, like he does say, there's a moment where Little Richard is playing Tutti Frutti, and it's so funny. I'm watching the guy playing Little Richard do it. I'm like, can we just follow him for a while? I like this guy. And they really don't play much of it. But there's a moment where Elvis is like, I bet I would like to cover his song. And BB says, well, if you do, you'll probably make a lot more money than he does. I like those moments. I really like those moments. It's just a shame that, we see it for like 2 seconds, and that's this movie in a nutshell. It's just like there's a moment where Sister Rosetta Tharpe, another person I get a lot of comments on, Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Okay, great. Sister Rosetta Tharpe, who has now been called the Queen of Rock and Roll. Okay, obviously influenced Elvis. So who is Sister Rosetta Tharpe? Like, what kind of music does she do? Like, she does Strange Things Happen Every Day. I'm like, well, that's some new Led Zeppelin-y version of Strange Things Are Happening Every Day. I'm like, that's not the original. I'm like, why don't they play the original? Why don't they let... God, there's a moment where Gary Clark Jr., who I love Gary Clark Jr., he's playing Arthur Big Boy Crudup, who, of course, wrote That's All Right, Mama, which was Elvis's first hit. And he's singing it like he's Prince. Like in, That's All Right, Mama. I'm like, what is he doing? I've heard the original version. It doesn't sound like that. God, I feel like an asshole for saying this, but I just want to quote that moment from the John Adams series where he goes, "It's very bad history." And I don't want it to be, it's just, oh God, it's so frustrating. But let's take the musical history stuff out for a minute. Is it any good as a film? Well, look, if you're into the Baz Luhrmann style, if you like that real frantic, quick editing, this is going on over here, well, this is going on, and just random music things that happen for no reason in a music biopic, then maybe you'll like the film. It stars Austin Butler as Elvis. He's okay. I mean, he's fine. I think I think the direction doesn't really give him much to do, and maybe he's really like, there's moments where you see him on TV doing the famous Hound Dog, the Hound Dog in the Milton Berle show, and we don't really get to see that. Instead, it cuts to some asshole being like, "What is that man doing on my TV?" And they're like, "We're gonna send him to jail," and all these, and but anyway, yeah, Austin Butler plays Elvis. Whatever, it's like I always say, even in Bohemian Rhapsody, which I liked that film, and Rami Malek I think did an admirable job, but it's like, I know I'm not watching Freddie Mercury, and I know in this film I'm not watching Elvis Presley. It's just somebody doing an impression of him. Elvis Presley is too well known of a figure to make a biopic about. It doesn't, you're always going to be comparing the actor to the original. And the original is more interesting. But really what I was surprised was I knew that Tom Hanks was going to be playing Colonel Tom Parker. Listen, I love Tom Hanks, but wow, is he bad in this film. And I don't know if it's performance or the direction or the writing or the editing. It's almost like they try to make him out to be a sympathetic character, which he was not. He was a bastard. And a lot of the worst parts of Elvis's legacy can really be attributed to him. Like the fact that Otis Blackwell had to share credit on his songs with Elvis. That was Colonel Tom Parker. He just said, if you want Elvis to cut one of these records, he's got to write some of the lyrics and he's got to have a co-writing credit on that. That was his idea. So he's not somebody, and the whole story is told through his eyes, through his narration. And as soon as I saw that, I went, oh God. Oh, this is going to be painful. Oh, it's just going to be so painful. And it just went from there. I mean, you had the moment where he plays "That's All Right, Mama" and he's shaking his hips, and all the girls are like screaming for him. Fine, but it's just the whole way it's edited and shot and put together is so overly dramatic and so over the top, and you know how I feel about things like that, to the point where I'm just like, I just know I'm watching a Hollywood film. It's so disheartening, honestly, because I feel like, I started History of Rock and Roll because I love rock and roll music. I really do. I love so many other types of music, but rock and roll music is something that has given me so much peace of mind over my life. I'm going through Pink Floyd's catalog right now, and I'm working on Dark Side of the Moon. And, one of the things I'm really realizing is that, and Roger Waters talks about this, is like the idea that you have to sit down for a minute and just let the music take you in. Let you have a moment where you think about what is being said. Us and them. Us, and them. There's these spaces between the lyrics. It just gives you a minute to calm down. And even in Elvis's music, sure, it was fun and frantic. Hound Dog and Jailhouse Rock, and so many songs. Let Me Be Your Lovin' Teddy Bear. But there's also moments like, Can't Help Falling in Love, where he gets to just take a minute. Even Heartbreak Hotel. Well, since my baby left me, I found a new place to dwell. Bow, bow. There's something about the spaces in between that creates some tension that's really, really great. And you don't get any of that here. There's little snippets of it, but it just goes for this over the top, schmaltzy, just Hollywood bullshit. There's a moment where I want to look up this actor because I actually really liked her. I apologize if I'm getting this name wrong. Shanka Dugare. Again, sorry. Big Mama Thornton. She plays Big Mama Thornton. And you see her go, "You ain't nothing but a hound dog." And she's doing it. I'm like, cool, I like this part. And then it keeps cutting away. It's like to Elvis outside. I'm like, no. Let's stay with this for a minute. I like this. Like, this could be a breakout moment for this actor. Oh, God, it was so frustrating. I'm watching her. I'm like, I want to see a whole film with this actor playing Big Mama Thornton. That would be cool. I would really like that. But actually, it's probably better that they didn't do that because they would have just totally fucked it up. And it's just, it's like there's at one point where you're cutting between three things. You're cutting between Colonel Tom Parker watching Elvis outside, about to do one of his first shows. Him as a kid watching Arthur Big Boy Crudup, and him in a revival tent. And it's just like, it's like, okay, first we're over here, now we're over here, now we're over here, now we're over here, now we're over here. Was that annoying? That's this movie, okay? That's this movie. It's annoying. It's an annoying movie. Now, again, credit. There are moments when, like there's a moment where Sister Rosetta Thorpe is singing Strange Things Happen Every Day. And by the way, people, it doesn't sound like that, okay? It's not an electric guitar song. It doesn't have drums on it that are like, boo, bah, boo. It doesn't have John Bonham drums on it, okay? And she's not playing guitar like she's Chuck Berry, okay? That's not the song. I love the song. Great song. Very important song. But it doesn't sound like that. Stop telling me it sounds like that. God. I'm probably blowing out my mic with all this. I apologize if did I blow out the mic right? Oh my God, yeah, I'm screaming. I'm sorry if I'm screaming so much. God. I don't know what to say. God. But anyway, Sister Rosetta Thorpe is playing her Led Zeppelin version of Strange Things Happen Every Day. And then there's like moments where they cut to his mama going, strange things happen every day. And I'm just like, this is so funny. This is the most hilarious, this is the most unintentionally hilarious thing I've ever seen. So here's what happened. My mom and I were just like, we were just sitting there going, God, this movie's a piece of shit. And at some point, I really wanted to walk out of the film because I just said, I've seen enough. So I said, you know what? I'm going to give them until they do Jailhouse Rock. Okay? Let's see how they do Jailhouse Rock. That's my favorite Elvis song. That's an icon. That's probably like the peak of Elvis, like when he did that Jailhouse Rock sequence in the movie, which is his best movie. And then it turns out he's going to the army. Like they finish up, before he gets to Jailhouse Rock, they say he's going to the army, and he's in the army. Which you don't get to see him in the army. I was like, well, maybe that'll be interesting. Maybe like a Forrest Gump kind of thing where, by the way, the one scene of Elvis in Forrest Gump is so much better than this entire movie. But I was like, well, maybe that'll be interesting. See Elvis in the army. Like, what happened to him while he was in the army? Like, how did that change him? No, they don't do that. The only thing you see is that he meets Priscilla. That's the only thing you see. And then when he comes back, the colonel's like, we're going to make you a movie star. When you come back, we're going to get you in movies. Well, he was already doing movies. Jailhouse Rock came out before he went into the army. You know, Jailhouse Rock, 1957, that's like the peak of 50s rock and roll. It was right after that he went into the army, and that's when everything went wrong. Chuck Berry went to jail. Little Richard became a preacher. Jerry Lee Lewis had the sex scandal with his 13-year-old cousin. It's just that I'm not expecting the timeline to follow it exactly. It's a biopic. You've got to change things. But Jailhouse Rock, that's the moment where Elvis cements his stardom. And it was like his first film where people were like, oh wow, we've never seen this side of Elvis before. And it's so they don't talk about it. I'm assuming maybe later on when he does his comeback special or something like that, or maybe it was in Vegas that he does Jailhouse Rock. Maybe that's where they put it in there, but terrible decision as far as I'm concerned. The last thing I remember seeing before I walked out was them just skimming through his movies and his Viva Las Vegas, that period of Elvis I absolutely hate, where he did all those terrible movies. Pedro the Bull. My dad and I used to make fun of that all the time. But I looked to my mom and I just said, you want to bail? And she was like, yeah, I can't take it anymore. And there was a minute where they talk about Martin Luther King's got shot. And I was like, oh, okay. Maybe this will be interesting. And I sit down for a minute and then they're done. Elvis looks sad for a minute and then they move on. And I just said, I'm done. Now, it's possible that maybe the movie gets better after that. Maybe it does. Maybe there's some really good, strong moments in there. But I was like, look, you've had me for an hour and 15 minutes. And I've hated basically every single thing you've done. So I'm not going to sit here and watch this film. And I would like to ask anybody, because I know, what's funny, there's a moment where they make up buttons. Like, love Elvis, Elvis is the king, or whatever. And they hold up, what is this? This says, I hate Elvis. And Colonel Tom Parker says, hey, if it generates money, what's the difference? And it's honestly, I sort of feel like as soon as I got back from the theater, I was like, I don't know that I even want to make a review of this film because I sort of feel like I'm inadvertently promoting it. Even though I'm saying it's terrible, don't go see it. Because I feel like a lot of you are going to maybe see this review and go, well, that's interesting. I wonder how bad it is. And you'll go see it. And there's probably a bunch of you like, well, I saw it and I didn't think it was so bad. And you can leave comments. And look, it's fine if you liked it. If you liked it, if it moved you, fine. There's a lot of things that move me that a lot of people don't like. But I can't say I'm surprised. I knew what I was getting into when I went to go see the film. A director I don't like. I don't like rock and roll biopics in general. And they're going to... I was actually kind of surprised that, because I was wondering, are they really going to hammer in... How are they going to do this? Like, because you know how Hollywood is right now. Like, a lot of people call it the woke thing or whatever. So I was like, well, I wonder if they are really going to talk about how he really got a lot of his music from black artists. Will there be somebody playing Otis Blackwell? Will there, how is this all going to work out? And I feel like it's whitewashed. It's like, seriously, kind of whitewashed. And like I said, even if you are a person who wants to believe that Elvis could do no wrong, there was nothing wrong, and all the woke people are wrong, I don't even think this is going to satisfy you, because even as a fan of Elvis, my mom's a fan of Elvis, I mean, she's watching it going, what does this have to do with Elvis? This has nothing to do with Elvis. This doesn't tell you how he was a great singer or the people he influenced, or it doesn't tell you anything about Elvis. It's just another, vehicle for Hollywood to have, Tom Hanks do a bad impression of Colonel Tom Parker and just and sell a soundtrack. That's all it was. I believe that this movie was made to sell a soundtrack. That's what I believe. See, my upstairs neighbor agrees. So, God, yeah, I don't even know what else I can say about this film. It gets a bad fish from me. No contest. Is it the worst film I've ever seen? No, it's not the worst film I've ever seen. There are a couple moments I thought were kind of cool, but I just finally decided, I'm like, you know what? I don't know how much time we have on this earth with all the things that are going on. Today was the day where the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. They overturned something in New York for gun control. It's day 100 and what in the war in Ukraine. And I just sort of have come to this point where I don't really know how much time we have on this earth or what, so I'm just now of the point where I don't want to waste my time watching a crappy Hollywood cash grab, which is what this is. There are so many movies out there of original ideas that never get seen, never get talked about. I'm probably not adding to that by talking about this movie, but we have to make this movie about Elvis, which how many movies have been made about Elvis at this point, with Tom Hanks, and it's just, there's something very disingenuous about it from this it's just a mess. It's a mess of a movie. And that's all I have to say about it. If maybe you'll go see it and you'll like it. I don't know. But I hated it. Absolutely hated it. And I never want to talk about this film again. I'm done. What did George Carlin say? Fuck Elvis. Comment, like, share this video, watch my History of Rock 50s vid. Thank you to my patrons. And that's it. Bye.